speaker is a systems designer at Sony Online, working at the upcoming DC Universe Online. Coming up to him, Sara Jensen Schubert.
So I'm taking a couple of risks here. The first one is that I'm trying to give you some real job skills. After going to all of these GDCs and Austin-IGDA and such, I was always concerned that what I was learning was cool, but as a system designer and middle manager, it wasn't really useful to me in my everyday experience. What I would like to share with you today is, what I would like to share with you today are some tips for using Excel to make your life better. So, like we said, I'm a systems designer. I've been a systems designer for almost 10 years now. One of the things that's been true that entire time is that I almost always have Excel open in my taskbar. So that means that I've ended up using Excel for a lot of things that it's not really built for. And I've learned people can ask me to come over and help them out with Excel problems, and I see them also using it for things it wasn't built for. And I see them using it badly. So Excel is good for math, like the RPG spreadsheets I use every day, but it's also good for simple log review and analysis, like those metrics that Christian was just talking about. It's also good for manipulating data, and it's good for formatting data for use in other tools. This is really my favorite thing for it. Here's an example. This is totally made up, but this looks like a lot of spreadsheets I made over time. Like, here's a bunch of shit I have to paste in a table. Here's another bunch of shit I have to paste in another table. Excel makes my life really easy because I can do that all in one place and just paste it back into the database, and I don't have to spend a lot of time moving back and forth between different things. Excel is not so good for reviewing relational data. I actually use it a lot for that. Use HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP. Look it up on your own time if you're interested in it. It's not great for reviewing non-tabular data like paragraphs, obviously. It's also not fantastic for presentations, but I'm going to try to use it anyway because I'm trying to do demos here. One thing about these demos is I'm using Excel 2007, which exposes a lot of the cool stuff I'm trying to show you. Most people aren't using this version. Most people are using an older version that doesn't make 2003, that doesn't make it that obvious, but all of this stuff is still called the same thing. Like, conditional formatting is still called conditional formatting in 2003. You just have to look for it a little harder. Do that on your own time. A lot of these techniques depend on copying and pasting out of Excel efficiently. You'll find if you try to paste things into it, it doesn't always look right. Try pasting it into a text editor first. Maybe not Notepad, but TextPad or Et Plus or anything like that. It'll put tabs in the right places and it'll work fine. Copying data out of Excel normally works fine because it puts tabs in the right places and everything. One of my favorite things to do with it, like I said, is creating those data entry worksheets, like this fantastic one I showed you. If you paste this into pretty much any database program that accepts pasted input, it'll work fine. If you have too much data to copy and paste by selecting and actually copying and pasting with Control-V and Control-C, you don't have to use VB script. Perl works fine. Most of my tools are in Perl because I know it. Python probably works fine. Any scripting language you use probably works fine. So our first example, reviewing logs. Most of you should be reviewing logs if you're not. Like Christian has been talking about, it's important. You're learning interesting things from the things that you're logging. I was going to rant here about human readable logs, but I don't have time for it as I learned in my practicing, so come by and ask me about it later if you're interested. But your logs should be in a tabular format so you can look for important values rather than trying to scan something that looks like your combat log and wow, and you can't learn anything from it. Once it's actually in a tabular format, you can paste it into Excel using the tips that I just told you to try to look for things that are interesting. So, like I said, I'm trying some risks here by actually giving you live demos. So we'll see whether or not they work. Let's say, so my example here is we have a combat log. Sorry, that's a systems designer thing. If you're not a systems designer, try to think of something that works for you. Let's say that we're trying to figure out a problem with the two-hit formula, and you might say, what about QA, or what about automated testing? No, this is what system designers actually do. We load up an NPC, and we go and kill it, and we look at some logs to see what the problem is, because that's how life actually works for us. And maybe I have some noise in this in this log, so I can use this filter. I find that nobody knows about the filter system. Here in Excel 2007, like I said, it's really easy to find. It exists in other versions of Excel. You just have to look a little harder for it. Maybe I need to, like I said, I'm looking for a problem with 2-hit. I want to see things with a melee attack. I need to remove this, this noise with our fireball here. And I can use filter to only show me those things, and I want to delete it because I don't care. Then I can come back and say, no, show me these melee attacks. We have awesome formulas, and they don't just work for math. This count if will tell me how many things match that criteria. If I want to find the total number of hits here, voila, we have 7 hits here. And if I need to paste this into an email, like I said, I'm a system designer, I have to do a lot of this stuff. I might have to come back and say, no, really, there's a problem with the 2-hit formula. Even if you don't believe me, here are what the logs say. I can use count if to tell me, no, there are only 7 here, and so on and so forth. Count A is a formula that tells me how many there are total in that list. If I need to come back, or how many non-blank cells are in that. Maybe if I don't have typos in it, there are 11 total. Fantastic. Another thing that's really useful here is the conditional formatting stuff. Conditional formatting will highlight things for me based on criteria I give it. 2007 makes it really easy to do. It is not nearly this easy in other versions, but like I said, it's still called the same thing. If I want to highlight everything that's a miss, that's pretty cool, huh? So that's a simple example of reviewing logs. Something else I do a lot is column comparison. So here's a totally made up example of maybe designers have been able to enter 2 different NPC names in 2 different columns. And sometimes they match and sometimes they don't. But we want to find cases where they don't match. We have a formula called if. If also only doesn't work, or works for text as well as numbers. So we can say if this column equals this column, we'll say that's good. If it's not, we'll say that's bad. Well, that one's good because it matches. And then we can click and drag it down. It'll show us all the cases where it matches and it doesn't. And maybe I need to delegate this to somebody to fix so I can sort it. And I'll say, show me cases where match is sort of like so, and I can say, here are the bad ones. These are the ones I'm going to email to somebody to fix. Like I said, this might not be an example that works for everybody, but it should be, think of something where this would be useful for you. Speaking of clicking and dragging, click and drag is also something I see people doing wrong all the time. It's so simple. If you want Excel to extrapolate values, you only need to enter the first few, select both of them, and click and drag it, and it extrapolates all the values. Because Excel is smarter than it looks. Even if they're not sequential, maybe I can click properly. Even if they're not sequential, Excel will figure it out. Like it figured out there that those were even numbers. If you don't want it to extrapolate, you just want it to repeat the same thing, only select one value. Pretty awesome. Next up. Also going back to Excel only working on things that you have selected, search and replace is also smarter than you might think it is. Let's say, we have some designer string IDs and we have some artist string IDs, and of course we can't have them match. That would be stupid. If I need to replace something in one column but not in another column, just select the column you want it to work on, and we will search and replace here. Control H, right? Always use keyboard shortcuts when you can. So if I want to replace with 1H, like I said, I'm a system designer, I do this kind of weapon shit all the time. If I want to replace with 1H with one-hander, just make sure that the designer ID and the artist ID don't match. Watch that, it only worked in that column that I had selected. And here's my favorite thing, and I need to cover it really fast. The concatenate formula is a big word, but it's super awesome. Those kind of string IDs I have to deal with every day, and I use this formula to generate them because it's easier to fill shit out in columns than it is to actually type out the full string ID. Concatenate. and I will give it a prefix, right? And just say, pick something from that column, here's my delimiter, pick out something from this column, here's another delimiter, maybe I can type it in the right order, that would be cool. That's pretty cool, but it doesn't look great, so I can use another awesome Excel formula, try and make my life easier, called lower, to make it lowercase. Fantastic, that looks awesome, and I can just click and drag that to populate all of these cells. So, next I was gonna tell you about making drop-down menus, but I can't because I don't have time. The things you need to look up are names, make an official list of things, and then the data validation system lets you restrict what a user can enter. Names plus data validation equals drop-down menu. It's really awesome, you should try it sometime. In the meantime though, we need to get on to the next speaker. My name is Sara Jensen Schubert. My email address is sjensenschubert@gmail.com. Thank you.
And by the way, if all the speakers would provide me all the files that they used, we will make them available on the website.